Hey folks, it's Steve from M4, and what we have here is a new product which is going to be a replacement roller, which is going to be much stronger than some of the failed factory rollers that you find in new motorhomes. You might find that the rollers themselves are squishing. Some of these have bearings in them that are also squishing out. If your room is dragging, or the room seems to be sitting lower, or if you look at the roller and it's sitting lower and or the bracket's hitting the bottom of the room, you may have a failing roller. And we have a replacement to go into these specific brackets. The brackets are, you can't remove the bracket from the RV without taking out the room in most instances, because the screws go in from the top and there's no room to do it. So instead of replacing the bracket, we're just going to be taking out the bolt, the rollers, replacing that with a much better bolt, much better bearings, much better roller, and it's going to be done as a retrofit. Now, to do this swap, you do need to go through a procedure to lift the room up off the rollers. If you're not comfortable doing that, get a professional's help. It's not hard to do, and I'll explain how to do it at the end of this video. But you got to be careful on what you're doing so that you don't damage the bottom of the room. I am going to show you more information on this roller on the Workbench, and then we're going to do a basic install on the Workbench so you can see how they swap out and any precautions when doing so. And then at the end of the video, we'll get into how to lift up the room and actually swap them out where it's harder to see. That's why we're going to do the Workbench first. Okay, to the Workbench. Here's an existing rollers in this case. These might have bearings in them, they might not have bearings. This particular model does have bearings. The bearings are a skinny bearing, and there are 4 of them in the original roller. The problem is the weight on the bearing often breaks the plastic at the end, and they end up breaking out and the roller falls and fails. The bracket that we're talking about, as mentioned, and this is only going to fit these, is 4.5 inches to the outside, and the roller is 1 inch. These are only going to fit these brackets. These brackets are stamped USA 805, but you're not going to see that because that's already mounted to the RV. So on the existing one, the rollers are typically in 2 pieces, so they can put bearings on the inside and on the outside. This bearing's already out. They tend to have a lot of weight on the end, crushing the plastic and then breaking out, and then the bearings drop. The bolt we will not be using either, because it is a low-grade bolt, and the threads are actually at a point where the bearing is sitting on them, which is not a good thing. So we're going to be getting rid of all those parts and replacing them with these. The bolt that's going to be replacing everything is a 12.9 hardened shoulder bolt. It goes all the way to the end of it. It has a 3-inch shaft, 3/8 inch shaft all the way to the end, and we're using a roller bearing that rides right on that shaft instead. You can notice that the difference in the size of the bearings and the weight capacity. These roller bearings have a static weight capacity of 2,000 pounds a piece. They have a dynamic weight capacity of 1,600 pounds a piece. So I mean, they're way overkill for the application when this original bracket and roller is rated for a 200-pound capacity. We can easily triple that and still have plenty of room on top of that. The bearings are pressed into a nylon sleeve. There are 3 of them each one, and they will be pre-lubricated with Lucas Marine grade lubrication. So you don't need to do anything. You're also going to notice that the bolt is going to have lubrication on it too. You don't want to wipe any of that off. You don't want to add any to it. And it will ride on there, and it's not going to spin as freely as an unlubricated bearing. It'll spin exactly as it's supposed to once it's installed. So what are you going to need to do this installation? First of all, to lift the room, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but you're going to need a floor jack or a construction jack and some 4x4s or 2x4s to lift the room. We'll get into those details later. To just get the roller out, to uninstall, you need a 9/16 inch wrench for the existing bolt. You need a 9/16 inch socket. I like to use a swivel because it's hard to get in at the angle that you need to on the actual RV. It's going to be easier here because we're going to be wide open. To install the new roller, which you'll need, of course, a new roller. It's got the nut and bolt in it. You will need a 1/2 inch socket for the nut, and then you will need a 3/16 inch hex key in order to hold the shoulder bolt. The shoulder bolt, as mentioned, is grade 12.9, extremely strong and hard. We're using no washers. Do not try to add any washers because the width of this is set up perfectly for the bracket without washers. If you add them, it's going to cause other issues. So pretend you're looking down from the top of the RV downward. This is mounted to the frame, and your slide out room is rolling over it. Obviously, we're at an advantage right here, right now, because we can see everything. When it's actually on the RV, you're working in a small space. You're going to have the jack and everything lifting it, but you're going to be working in a space that looks more like that. Thus, the extension and the universal joint and the socket, in order to get it away from the RV to be able to turn the nut much easier when taking it off and putting it back on. We will be jacking up the room about like that much. It'll have to be enough that the roller clears those screws, and just enough to do that. You only want to do one roller at a time in case you have any problems with the jack. You do not want to get your fingers in there anywhere where they're going to be vulnerable or could be pinched. So take one roller out, put one roller in, move to the next one. You're going to be moving the jack between each one too in order to properly support the weight. So we're going to get that out of the way. And this part is pretty straightforward. This one is already loosened. But with the universal joint, since you can't get in here to loosen everything, the universal joint is going to allow you to get outside of the RV to get access and be able to turn the wrench, and then you will be able to get the other wrench on the end. So this one's already loose, and you're going to be working tight. Like I said, you don't want to get your fingers where they don't need to be, and those two rollers will come out as long as the bolt, as well as the bolt, and you're not going to use any of that. The new roller will come like this. It has a nylock. It has the shoulder bolt, which is lubricated, and like I said, the bearings are already pre-lubricated with Lucas Marine Grade. And you're going to be putting it through. Should go in very easily. What you do need to make sure, though, is that the bolt shoulder is going all the way through the other side of the bracket. See that last drop? If it's hanging up like that and the bolt head is not all the way down, it needs to be moved on the smaller side to align it so it drops in all the way. Otherwise, it's going to pinch. This socket is going to be a 1/2 inch and the 3/16 inch bolt. And again, we're going to be doing this at an angle because we don't have all the room that you're looking at right now when it's actually on the RV. And I'm going to show you at an angle at the same time. So as this is tightened, make sure that shoulder bolt doesn't fall back out of the bracket. And then we're going to talk about how tight to make it and adjusting it. Now, we want the roller to be able to move and have a little bit of play. The shoulder bolt will bottom out on the nylock at one point, and this one is bottoming out and it's still spinning. You still want a little bit of play in there, so once it bottoms out and you have no more room on the roller, back it off a quarter to half a turn. That's going to give it a little bit more room. The nylock won't back off, and that one is good to go. So easy enough on the Workbench, of course. That gives you a general idea of what the improvements are and how easy it is to put in. We're going to take this to the RV and do the 6 of them on the main slide. We'll do the other slide after. But I'm going to show you how to properly and securely raise a room enough to be able to get the roller in and a roller out. And you're going to be doing that 6 times carefully. And then away you go. Hopefully no more issues with squished rollers, because these things are stout. So the RV that we're going to be putting the rollers on today is a Dynamax 32KD. It has a longer slide underneath the kitchen, and it has 6 rollers, and it's an 18-inch slide. Step 1, as always, before you move your slides, you're going to level the RV. Step 2, you're going to bring out the slide, and you're going to bring it out halfway. So we're going to take one more trip to the Workbench to explain where and why you're going to be lifting the room in a particular area. Basically, the room's made up of beams across the floor. In the case of the one I'm doing now, they're about 24-inch on center. So right underneath that is the floor of the room, and then it's a roller. So the roller is directly underneath one of those beams. It is never off that, because then it would be a soft spot on the floor. So when you lift, you need to lift right in front of the roller. That way you're lifting on the beam. And then by using a 2x4 underneath, it's going to protect the bottom, and also it's going to spread that load across the bottom of the floor, hopefully to some other beams. So being a 18-inch slide, it doesn't need to be out that far. It might be 11, 12 inches actually. But you can see where the rollers are, and I'm going to be going in there and just replacing them just like we did on the bench. And you can see the little path here where the roller's been running, and that's where the beam is underneath the floor. So we're going to have to lift right about here, enough room that you can still see and work, but as close to that as possible. And we're going to use a 2x4 along the length of this, and then do each roller one by one and move the jack each time. So here's the setup to lift the room. A standard floor jack, or like I said, you can use a construction jack without a post. 4x4 cut the length so you have enough room to work and lift. A 2x4 spanning the beams underneath. It's lined up right with the roller, and it's jacked up just enough so there's a gap above the roller to be able to pop it out and put the new one in. Little tight in there, can't really take a picture. That's why we did it on the bench. And I'm going to swap those out. Okay, so the new roller is in place. As a reminder, make sure that bolt is fully seated, because that shoulder, not the threads, have to go through the second hole in the bracket, and it'll click in and over that, and then you can put the nylock down. But that shoulder has to be riding on or through the second side of the bracket. So one more time, this one lifting up the roller next to it gave this one enough room so you can see exactly what's going on. This is a new roller with the shoulder bolt. Needs to go in until that head is all the way down. And now it's flush, and the shoulder bolt's sticking out the other side. We'll put the nylock on. Maybe not a full quarter to half turn, more like a quarter if need be. But basically you just want a little bit of play, so as it ages, if it widens at all, which it really shouldn't, but it has some play in there. But it's tight enough that it keeps the bearing and grease and everything clean as well up against the end of the bracket. That's it, 6 done. So there you have it. It gives you a basic idea of the new retrofit roller, shoulder bolt, roller bearings, super strong, available at m4products.com or m4led.com. I'll bring you to the same place. Use the search tool, type in roller, and you will find them there.